away from Hyderabad. He usually comes to Chennai to help us, but this time he's going to do it via video. And he usually doesn't prefer video, he told me, but he said he'll do it for us, and that's very kind of him. Thank you, sir. He's currently a visiting professor. Prior to his retirement, he was advisor to the office of the principal scientist of Government of India. He was also former head of TNBD division at CSIR, and he's a very distinguished scientist, and he's going to talk to us about today. And not talk to us more, he's going to try and answer our queries on creating an enabling environment, entrepreneurial ecosystem in publicly funded institution. So welcome to you, Dr. Rao, and I'm delighted to have you here. So I hand it over to you. Maybe you can just set the pace, and then people can start asking questions and so on.
Yeah, okay. Good. Thank you, Muthu. Good evening to all. This is wonderful talk to all people. Before we start, let me set the stage for you people to raise some questions on this particular thing. So I have been working on sort of encouraging innovation ecosystem or entrepreneurial ecosystem in a publicly funded institutions. It could be universities, it could be laboratories like CSIR laboratories and other things. Now, basically, when you want in the recent past, if you look into this institutional rankings that are coming, you must have been seeing in the newspapers. One is called NIRF, and other one is recently Atal ranking. The NIRF is basically deals with the academic progress that the university or academic standing of a university or an institution. Whereas Atal ranking is basically recognizes the innovation and entrepreneurial activity of an institution. Both these are very important for any institution to this thing. So that's one makes it entrepreneurial ecosystem, creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem within the institution very, very important. That's point number one. Number two is that many of the students, those who really take it up this kind of an entrepreneurship activity, they would be first generation entrepreneurs. So they have no idea of what is an entrepreneurship, how it will go, how it should be done, and other things. So that's where we need to really handhold them and take them the path of what I call as entrepreneurship activity. For that, you need to have some good number of mentors and who would be really able to take them, their ideas, and groom them to become an entrepreneur in that. Another aspect that would be very helpful on an institution is basically pre-incubation. If anybody comes with an idea, allow him to do pre-incubation. What I call is that not really you are getting into the incubation, but pre-incubation testing, proof of testing, what I would call feasibility of your idea, whether it will work or not work. It's not even proof of concept. Even before the proof of concept, you are trying to see whether the idea will work or not. So that's what I call is the feasibility of the idea, testing the feasibility of the idea. If you can allow, the institution can allow this particular thing, many students, many people will come into this particular thing with their ideas and try to experiment with the new ideas. Along with this particular thing, what you would require in a system like the institutions is a faculty entrepreneurship scheme. It's not only the researchers or students who should be encouraged, but even the faculty should be encouraged to take up the entrepreneurial activities within the institution. For that, they need to introduce a scheme and permit the faculty to what I call is enter into entrepreneurship activity. Then you would require, for example, whenever this kind of a system comes into the picture, some of the pre-incubators, graduates to incubation stage, they would need what I would call, because most of them are first generation entrepreneurships, they would require certain funds. So institution should see how they can create a seed fund so that you can give it little money to all the people. Seed in the pre-incubation, they would wet their feet and they make a decision whether they would like to follow the entrepreneurship or not. In the seed fund stage, what they would do is basically they will test a proof of concept. They will test their idea for a proof of concept. Then you have, because as I told you, most of the students and even the faculty, many of them have no idea of the entrepreneurship. what would be very useful for an institution is to have some courses on what I would call on entrepreneurship activity. What is an entrepreneurship? The rudiments of the entrepreneurship, nuances of entrepreneurship has to be taught to all the students as a what I would call is as an optional credit course. And it should be across the university or institution. It should be provided to all the people. In addition to that, uh, there should be every 6 months or every year, there should be what I would call an idea contest. The idea contest is that you ask all the students to come out with new ideas that would address some of the unsolved problems of the society, and then see how we can and have a screening of those things, and best of the ideas should be allowed to take into what I would call into an entrepreneurial activity and other things. These are some of the loose thoughts that I had in my this thing, and it would be very, very useful for an institution to enter into entrepreneurial ecosystem. As I told you right in the beginning, it is becoming part of the institutional ranking. So this becomes very, very critical for the institution to encourage entrepreneurial activity. Let me end with an anecdote. Once, when I was in my CSIR organization, one day one young student came to me, and he was doing his master's in business administration or something, and he came for doing his what I would call his uh, summer workshop or summer project in India. So he was working with the planning commission and trying to understand the planning commission activities. One day he came to me. He was to spend one full day with me to discuss with me. So at the end of our discussions and other thing, I asked him, what is the difference that you have found between the UK and India? You studied in India, so what is the difference that you found? He says, in UK, in India, the schools or institutions, the universities train the students to serve somebody, to serve someone. Whereas in UK, they train the students and they teach the students to become a provider of employment. That means they would encourage the people to become entrepreneurs. That's the difference between UK education system and Indian education system. I think we need to graduate to that stage where Indian education institutions would provide uh, uh, instead of serving somebody, they should make a platform for people to become entrepreneurs and provide jobs to many other people. I think that's where I will stop, and I look forward to your questions so that I can, to my best of ability, I will try to answer some of those questions.
Thank you
Good.
so much. I can open the floor first. Anyone has a question, please go ahead and ask. Otherwise, I have some questions earlier, so I can ask them. I can get it started off if no one has a question to ask first. Does anyone have a question to ask? Okay, maybe I get the thing started off. Now, you talked about, in particular, public institutions to be doing all this. Do you think there's a difference, much difference between private and public schools when it comes to this area of topic? Should they be looking at equally, together, or should it be different for both sectors?
Yeah, strictly speaking, there should not be any difference. But the fact of the matter is, in India, most of the private institutions are basically commercial kind of an activity. For them, the research component is very, very low. When research component is very low, you would find it very difficult for them to get into innovation and then to the entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, they may still be able to go, but innovation component becomes very, very low. But I think many private institutions are also now entering into the research. So if the recent research increases, grows, perhaps I think they would also be the same. So when I said, although my topic says in publicly funded institutions, it need not be that any higher education institutions, higher institutions you call it. So I think that would answer perhaps to this question.
Okay, now if you take a look at the government funding, now recently they have opened up, they even give it to private institutions and public institutions, and then now I would say reasonably good opportunities for other colleges to get besides the top ranking ones. In your opinion, is that a good way to go forward, or would it have been better to just focus on the bigger ones?
See, while government grants and government funding may come to certain extent, it can help in a institution, but the institution should have a policy for research, and they should also start funding their own institutional research. You can't expect all the time if the government grant comes through, then only I will do research. Otherwise, I will not do research. Is not going to take you far. Okay, this has to become an integral part of the institute, and they would have to work towards that particular thing. And how do they do, and other thing, they will have to work it out at the end and then try to bring it out. Now, if they only depend on the governmental grants, as you know, governmental grants are limited, and there are many contenders. The institutions with their current status of the research within their organization will find it very difficult to really get this funding. So it would take for some time, unless they increase their research quotient in their particular institution. It would become difficult. So I'm not saying that they should not, but they should. It could add to their, but they should have a policy of.
Okay. Any questions as yet? Okay, there is a okay.
Excuse me, sir. This is Kalarani,
please
sir.
ask. Please ask.
Yeah, and sir, it is the situation in traditional universities, especially the university like ours, women university, where we don't have any affiliated institutions. It's a very big task to have funding, sir, to provide seed money to the innovators. Already we get innovators mostly without much financial background. So how to cope up with this sort of situation? Because they may anticipate some help, financial help. So what are the other options, channels, sir, you suggest? Excuse me, sir, I can't hear you, sir.
Wait. I think he might have locked out. I think just let him come back in.
Yeah.
Sumitra, is Dr. Rao locked out or what? He's locked out.
Yes,
Huh?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, just give him a second. He must have had an issue with his computer.
Sir, meanwhile, sir, meanwhile, I came to know that recently you had.
He's back, so you can ask him directly now.
Okay.
He's back. You're still on mute.
I've done that. I have done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rani, go for it now. Ask him again because he must have missed the end of that question.
Yeah, no, sir, I will. Sir, the thing is, it's not really a general question, but in our case, sir, Mahila University is a traditional university without much affiliated colleges, and there is very minimum scope for self-financing our university. So, in such cases, are there any channels to gain funding for seed money? Because without any financial support, the innovators are not coming forward, sir, to start.
See, the seed fund generate. Yeah, sure. You need to generate the seed fund in the sense there are 2-3 avenues are there. One is that Bionest. If you complete 3 years of this thing, Bionest will provide you some seed fund. In case if you are interested to take that, they will provide you some seed fund. In addition to that, you also have other like DST also has provided some seed fund under Nidhi and other things. Some seed fund they also provide. Besides that, is a corporate social responsibility. Industries under the corporate social responsibility also tries to provide some funding as a seed fund and other thing. These are the some of the avenues that are available for universities or institutions to tap into. But that would not be sufficient. At the end of the day, you would require even little more also. So that makes it this thing. But you need to,
Yes.
university or institution like university like yours should also have some sort of a plan. How do I generate a, sort of seed fund to support my
Fund.
incubators?
Okay, next question,
Okay.
Mitra. You can ask the question directly,
Okay.
Doctor.
Thank you.
So my question is how to encourage students to entrepreneurship as a career path after their graduation, sir.
Yeah, that's what I said. You see, when most of the students are basically first generation entrepreneurs, okay, they would find it very difficult. There is something which is there are two things that that would put off most of the students. One is the fear factor. The fear factor is, suppose if I fail, what is my future? So that is something that is always bothers them. And I think we need to, as a society, we need to really come out with a solution for that. And institutions has to see how best we can support them, even if somebody fails. That's number one. The number two is that in our society, particularly the Indian society, do not look failure. They don't take it. They take it rather failure. They take it very poorly. Now you see that if somebody fails, they will see this fellow is always a failure. Sort of this society has got a stigma on that particular thing. Now, this is another thing that is really puts off the many of the students. That's why they go for what I call the safe bet of getting into a job. Now I think these are the things one cannot change it overnight. Only with the time they should be able to do. That's number one. How you can motivate is that you need to invite some of the people who have been first time entrepreneurs and made success out of whatever their career, and then they should come and motivate your students that you can also become a entrepreneur and successful entrepreneur by giving their personal examples and other things. I think these are some of the ways that one can try to motivate. And besides that, as I told you, some sort of a credit course should be introduced in all the institutions to encourage what I call is that entrepreneur. What is entrepreneurship is all about, and the rudiments of entrepreneurship and nuances of entrepreneurship should be taught in that course so that people will know exactly what they are entering into. I think these are some of the steps that could help really in doing that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now we have another question from Santanu. You can ask the question directly. You want to unmute and ask, Santanu? Okay, if you're not able to, then I'll ask. Building ecosystem has to begin with changing mindset of faculty. The first point of contact for student to bounce his ideas is his professors or tutors. Most of them, being full-time academicians, are not equipped to handle the question, your comments.
No, that's what I said. Actually, even the faculty are not fully aware of the entrepreneurship and other thing, and we can't depend only on the faculty to train the students and other thing. That's where we need to bring in mentors and those who have been already into the sort of they have been as an entrepreneurial journey that they have followed. Those are the people should come and talk to the students to motivate the students. That's other thing that I told you is that introduce the course, a credit course in the institutions, so that there is some amount of teaching will also help the what is all entrepreneurship about and other thing that would also help. I think these are the ways that one can try to motivate the students and bring the students into the entrepreneurial activity. And if the institute is high in the innovation, then normally the innovations which are developed in that particular institution is the first one to be taken by the students to move it forward. I think that makes it very different, another advantage for the, so the institutional innovation ecosystem or innovation coefficient will makes it very, very good.
Okay. We have another question by Karen Nallur. You want to ask a question directly? Karen,
Sure.
you want to unmute? Yeah,
Sure.
please go ahead.
So, sir, my basic question is, since incubators are the most prominent players of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in institutes, so if an institution wishes to start an incubator or maybe the innovation activities in their campus, so what are the ideal steps they can take to start the process?
The first and foremost is that, the institute has to recognize that entrepreneurship, innovation and entrepreneurship are integral part of the institute, and it should become a policy, integral policy of the institute. That's number one. Okay. Number two is that they would need to have some space and say this is the space that we will do only incubation activity and incubation in this particular thing. Then they would have to create some, what I would call is that some minimal facilities for the people to come and start working in that particular place. Once you have this kind of an infrastructure and some some basic facilities and other thing, then what you can do is that you can try to source some funds to give a better shape to the entire incubation activity in your place. I think that's what I feel is very essential. First and foremost is that faculty and the institutes alignment towards the innovation entrepreneurial ecosystem is very, very important. Otherwise, most of the institutes are basically interested in academic research. They are not interested in entrepreneurial innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem, building that particular thing. I think this is important.
We have a few more questions on the box, so I'll let Karen. You're okay. You want to ask? Continue. You want to ask a follow-through question?
Just a small follow-up question on that. So let's say if we have this, space and an integral policy that we have developed, but we would need some additional funds, and what if the government funds we are not unable to get? So is there any other source that we can get the funds from?
Yeah, that's what I told you. Under the CSR system, the government has liberalized the CSR schemes in such a way that any corporate can provide you certain funding for the incubation activity in the institution under the corporate social responsibility scheme. Okay, that is becoming, that's another avenue for institution to tap into, besides the governmental grants and other things. So this is what is available, and first and foremost, the institute should able to put in some money into the incubation activity. I think that it shows their seriousness and it shows their what I call commitment to that particular area. Otherwise, what happens is, since we are getting some grant funding, so they will get into it. Once the funding is over or the grant is over, they will start seeing, okay, this project is over. For them, it becomes a project rather than a commitment to the particular activity. So most important is that the commitment is required from the institution.
Okay.
Noted.
Is that okay? Is that okay, Karen?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir.
Okay, great. We have another question on the chat. Atma Malini, I'll ask because she has put the mic is not working. While funding raised by startups from investors is one of the performance metrics for incubators, how are the numbers evaluated, or in general, how is the incubator evaluated for performance?
No, this stage comes only when you have the proof of concept and other thing. Okay, there are angel funders will be there. The angel funders are the one who comes at your very early stage, and they say basically they look at your idea and then fund it. Thereafter, the venture fellows will come only when you are at certain particular stage. Okay, they will not come very early in the game. The early people, those who come, is that the only angel funders. Now, whenever you have an incubation activity, see, the first you must understand is that as an incubator, you must create certain assets for you to get a good valuation. What do you mean by assets? Assets need not be physical assets. Assets could be intellectual property. If you have good number of intellectual property that you have been able to generate, then your valuation of as a startup, as a company will go up. When that particular thing goes up, then automatically anybody who wants to invest in that, he would buy your share at a premium price. That's how your valuation goes up. Without you having really certain amount of IP, it would become very difficult for you to get a good valuation. So for you want to get a valuation, you must create assets. Assets not necessarily physical assets. Assets, basically intellectual assets, also considered as assets, particularly when these people evaluate the companies. I hope I have answered your question too.
Okay. Yeah, we have another question there. Parvez, you can unmute and ask, please. You have to unmute. Touch the screen and hit the mic. touch the screen, hit the mic. You're still unmute. You still have to unmute. No, we can't hear you. Go to the screen, then the bottom there will be a mic. Click on it.
I think you can unmute, no, Muthu? He's
No,
one.
I can't. I can only mute. Sumitra can mute them. I can't mute.
No, but I think you can unmute also because he's not able to unmute. It seems
no,
that he's
unmute
not.
he doesn't allow.
No, sir, he is unmuted only, but he has some connection, sir. So he needs to leave and he needs to come again.
Okay, let him send the question to you so that
I
you
have
can.
the question. I have the
Always
question.
just send the question to Muthu so that he will pose the question.
How do we strengthen the commercialization / tech transfer activities in academic systems while they produce a large chunk of patents and publications? How do we convert them into startups?
See, if you really look into the academic institutions, the patent portfolio, leave aside the IITs. I'm not talking about here IITs. There are large number of other higher education institutions. Their track record of generating IP is very low. Okay, let's be fair about it. Let's be frank about it. Now, unless you have a knowledge base, okay, knowledge base could be a technology or it could be a IP, it could be anything that basically creates, ultimately a knowledge which is exclusive for you. You will not be able to transfer that particular knowledge. Okay. Now that becomes very, very important. So transferring a technology or transferring technology here, in quote and unquote, is basically comprises of all, like IP, knowledge base, even a technique, and even a trade secret. All these things becomes part of the technology. Would be very difficult for an institution to do it unless they have, the kind of knowledge they are creating. Most of the institutions, unfortunately, not creating great amount of knowledge base. So that's the reason why the technology transfer in India really did not take off, except for in the research institutions. It did not take off. It is now IITs and other things, because of their they are able to generate new IP. They are coming into the area of the technology transfer and other things. So my personal feeling for technology transfer is some more time for our people to get it.
Okay. We have another question from Arshini. Arshini, you can unmute and ask those questions.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. So my question is, so who should fund all these activities? So is it the government's role to fund it, sir?
I told you, see, the government has limited money. Okay. Ultimately, government cannot fund all the incubation centers in this country. So the institutions, once they have a commitment, they will find a way to generate money. Okay. I think the first and foremost is the institute must have a commitment to the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. If that they have, they will generate and they will find the money. I mean, that's my personal feeling.
Okay. Ashwini, you have any more, or can I move on to the next questions?
Yes, sir. One follow-up question. So who will be the beneficiaries of this, sir?
See, ultimate beneficiary and all these things is that the society. Suppose, say, if somebody has made a big success, okay, when he is able to provide thousands of jobs, when he is able to provide the overall economic growth because of his business activity, ultimately it's the government. He pays through the taxes, he pays through variety of things. All these things, ultimately society gets benefited. It's not only that individual who is made, he will also get benefited, but the society is also going to get benefited across. So there is nothing like if somebody if someone makes an entrepreneur becomes successful. Take for example Infosys. You mean to say Infosys, because of the Infosys, how many people have become so rich? How many people have become really got jobs? Almost 1 lakh of people got the jobs, isn't it? So that's how you should look at it. Don't look at it what is the direct benefit to the institution. Institution also will get benefited, because if they are incubating at a particular place, they will also be benefiting that particular. You look at the IITs. how much money they are generating through their contributions from their alumni. The alumni is contributing significantly in many of the IITs. So that's how it is, it comes back in one form or other, it comes back to the society. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kalarani, you can ask your question, please. You can unmute and ask your question. You're on mute. Okay, I'll ask if she's not unmuting.
You telling me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, tell me, Kalarani.
No, sir, I just wanted
Yeah.
to. Hello?
You're breaking up. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello? Sir, this is
Yes,
Kalarani,
please.
sir.
Please.
Can I ask, sir? Yeah. Sir, you mentioned about pre-incubation, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
She wants to.
You mentioned about
Your voice is breaking.
pre-incubation.
Right,
So,
right.
how it is to be discriminated from innovation, sir? Innovation and pre-incubation, what exactly?
No, I think these two are what I would call these two. Let me explain you, Kalarani.
Involved with, sir.
Innovation is a part of.
My question.
See, I'm saying that innovation is part of in all the activities that you do. Okay.
Finding
the
out.
pre-incubation, what happens?
Yes.
You have an idea, and that idea you want to test its feasibility, whether it will really work or not work. Okay. So that's where you are trying to look at that particular pre-incubation. Once he's successful, yes, it works. Then he can go to the incubation activity. So the pre-incubation basically allows a student or a researcher to wet his feet in the entrepreneurial activity. Okay, so it doesn't eliminate the innovation. Innovation also becomes an integral part of those things. Whether pre-incubation, incubation, or post-incubation, incubation is integral part of all these things. It is not exclusive. Innovation is not exclusive. It's a part of that particular thing. In the research, when you do as a professor, you will have to innovate certain thing you are innovating. That's what you patent it, and then you give it to somebody to translate that into a technology. So that's what is innovation.
Okay.
Innovation and incubation, you can't separate them. They're an integral part.
Okay. And one more thing, sir, in the context of national educational policy development, now, what do you suggest related to the events to be included in the policy to promote entrepreneurship in the campus or in traditional universities?
Yeah. See, this
involve
particular
the
thing.
Students and all.
Yeah, you see, UGC had a committee, and I was a member of that particular committee. I'm just saying that, Kalarani, UGC constituted a committee. In fact, I'm part of that committee as a member, and we submitted our report. And the report has been accepted by the UGC Council. They said once the national education policy comes, we will implement this also. So this is where that is standing. Actually, we made all these recommendations in that UGC committee report. Okay.
So the entrepreneurship related add-on course will be can be included. There is an option.
Yeah, we have included all these, whatever I suggested in the early. All these things are integral part of that report.
Okay. Thank you. Archana, go for it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Archana, go.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. My question is, what kind of initiatives can universities or academic institutions should take in improving the entrepreneurial mindset or activities among the students during their course of academics itself, sir?
Yeah, that's what I said. One of the thing is, for example, that you need to introduce a course first on entrepreneurial active. What is an entrepreneurship? Okay, rudiments and nuances of the entrepreneurship be taught as a credit course across the disciplines. Okay, anybody who wants to take that, he should be encouraged. That's number one. And number two is that they should have some sort of an idea contest every 6 months, have an idea contest that there are some issues of the society, how we can address these issues of the society through science and technology, and select from that some of the best ones and provide them sort of a pre-incubation space so that they can try out their feasibility of their idea. I think these are some of the measures that one can introduce into the system. Now, in addition to this, if you can have sort of faculty entrepreneurship scheme, the faculty also gets interested into that, and they would also start doing what I would call as an entrepreneur. That's how you can motivate the students and other things. Besides this, you should organize what I would call is that a lecture series by some of the entrepreneurs who have been successful in their life by being a first-time entrepreneur, first-generation entrepreneur, and they can come and talk to you. Motivational talks can be ups and downs one goes through in developing, in particularly in taking up this career path of entrepreneurial activity. So that's how one can introduce and one can motivate the students in getting into this particular activity.
Okay, great. There's one more question in the chat box, but their mic is not working, so I'll ask you directly. Mic is not working, sir. Tell some suggestions on how students can take initiatives in the entrepreneurship fields, sir.
Now, I think earlier also I answered this particular thing. If you look at totality, but I've been asking that particular thing that you should encourage the students in many ways. I said to somebody, some entrepreneurs can come and talk to the people to motivate, and you can have some coursework can be introduced to make aware of what is an entrepreneurship. And third thing is that you should also encourage idea contest and other things. These are the things that would initial steps that needs to be. But more than all these things, the institute must have a commitment for innovation and creating innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem on the campus. Only then all these things work. Otherwise, there will be, these will be passing, something you do it and then you forget about it and you say that we have done and we have not been very successful, this kind of thing. But you should have a commitment to it, and one day or other you will succeed.
Okay,
Hope I have answered your.
Thank you for that. At the moment, there is no questions on the chat box, so I'll just ask you a couple of questions, and then they can come back and I'll keep asking. Now,
Sure.
We talk about encouraging all these people to do entrepreneurship. Now, some students pick it up and they get a lot of problems from home. Their parents are not used to all this, as our culture is more like getting jobs and, even if you did a degree, why would you, go into entrepreneurship? How do we deal with issues like that as an institution?
So as I told you earlier, Muthu, that it's a societal problem. Our society, you see, I would consider it's India basically a trader mentality. India as a society also a trader mentality. All the business people are also traders, even though they are manufacturing. So basically what we do is that we buy goods and sell goods, and we don't create and we don't develop. So as a result, we are more of what I would call defensive most of the time as a society. It's not that I'm saying that any particularly pointing it out to anyone. So as a result, we have that failure, is not treated well in the society. Okay, that's why people fear about taking up the entrepreneurship, because if I fail, what would happen in my position? What would be my position in the society? I think we need to, as a society, we have to come up, okay, and then address this particular issue. It cannot be addressed by one or two. It has to be addressed by the society, and the government has to take it up. That's the reason why government is trying to encourage entrepreneurship in all the respects. But ultimately, the society has to come forward. You compare with the Western world. If somebody fails, most of the successful entrepreneurs from the West, they would have failed at least half a dozen times to dozen times before they made it big. The society has given them opportunity after opportunity, opportunity after opportunity. But can that kind of a thing will be given by our society? We all need to question ourselves. Are we as a society encouraging the entrepreneurship or say innovation and entrepreneurship? We are not. I mean, this is a societal problem, and society has to change towards that. And someone has to keep on doing that. I think if you look at it, I say 20, 25 years back, and today, there is a lot of change that has taken place. Okay, even in the society also, there was a lot of change that has been taken place. I think maybe in our lifetime, we may see the total change in the society, or may not, but the society says. But as India is that we are like elephant, we move very slowly, In the slow, it takes time. For if other countries takes 10 years, we may take 30 years. That's all the difference.
Okay. There's another question from Padma Malini. Can you want to unmute and ask, Padma? Can you unmute, or you want me to ask? Mic is not working. Okay. What will be the percentage of students taking up entrepreneurship versus getting employed in job in the next 5 years? Will the shift be visible? I'm asking this as one succeeds out of 500 startups. Failure rate is high, but income is needed for them. The current startups take support from parents.
See, I mean, there are, of course, you have loaded question. If you really look at it, let me take IITs as an example here. In the past, okay, take about 20 years back, most of the IIT students either go abroad or they take up a job. Very rarely somebody has gone the path of entrepreneurial activity. In fact, in IITs, even before they complete, once they complete their fourth year, first semester, or even before that, they will all have a job in their hand. I was hearing from some of the IIT directors and other things. Many of the students are rejecting these offers, and they say that we want to be entrepreneur and we want to do on our own. I consider it as a welcome move, because IITs basically was the torch bearer in this, and they are moving in that direction. I feel most of the higher education institutions would follow this path. So, but how much time it will take, I mean, it will be difficult for me to predict another thing. Now, anybody who wants to start an entrepreneur, the first funding will come for personal money, your own savings, or your parents gives you some money, or your friends and relatives puts the money into it. This is the universally accepted now. The first initial funding would come from parents or your own savings, your own friends, and your own relatives. But they are the immediate people who will know you and who will be able to put in that kind of money. Thereafter, other people comes into the picture. So I think it is quite clear across the world. It is the same. Okay. So what I'm saying is that things are changing, but as I told you, we are elephant. How much time it will take, I don't know. I can't say anything, but it is happening.
Now, do you think institutions should have a mechanism for those who fail? They can do something like, for example, placement. Can it be delayed for a year or two or whatever?
Yeah, see, I think Muthu is a good question. Actually, it is that's where I'm saying that India is changing, but it would take its own course of time. I've been said that. See, in the earlier, if IITs used to have the system that only those students who are in that particular year, they are eligible to for the campus placements. But now I understand they have opened up for the people who wanted to follow this entrepreneurial path, and if they come back, they will also be able to get what I call is that a campus placement, even after 2 years of their passing out from the place. I think there is some changes are taking place in that particular segment. But as I told you, it is only in IITs. In other places, if you really look at it, it is much less. But things will happen, I think. It's slowly, they will also follow IIT path, largely. So I'm sure it will happen.
Do you think the IITs do that because they feel there is great value in entrepreneurship, obviously, and the private institutions may not since they are more focused on, academically because they collect fees and so on. Would that be the reason why they would be slower than institutions like IIT Madras or IIT or any of the IITs or IIMs or the IICs?
Right.
That would be one of the concerns. Now, what do you think about? I think they've started in Andhra. You can correct me if I'm wrong. They allow people to take the IITs don't allow that. They allow you to take a year out in between if you have an idea and you want to try. What's your view on that?
This is very difficult to say, in the sense that we need to go through the experience and how it really works and other thing. But there's a chance of being misutilized also. So I would personally feel one should complete their education system, or during the education one should start. Both should go parallelly, in the sense that you may take little more time to complete it, but not complete break. Or if you're taking a break, that will be permanent break. If you succeed, you will never come back. Okay. So I think it should be, we need to wait and see for the outcome of these things and how it really happens. Then only we can make a comment on this particular thing.
Okay, so those are a couple of things I suppose institutions could explore to make entrepreneurship more attractive or more exciting for people to try out. Now, what would your advice be for a startup who starts? I mean, you've been in many committees, funding committees, and so on. How would they cope if they fail? What should they like? How would they get around it?
That's what I told you, in the sense that, you see, the failure is not, as I told you, is not taken what I call kindly in our country. Okay, it's a society problem. This is somehow, there is no solution, easy solution for this. Neither government nor institutions can do anything on this, honestly. Okay, it is the question of basically the society changing its attitude, society changing its mindset. Once they do that particular thing and give him chance, see his intensity, see his sincerity in what he's trying to do, and give him more opportunities, and then he will be successful one day or other. As I told you earlier, many of the people, those who are really successful today, they all had failed ventures. All of them, after at least 3-4, they failed, and then only they made a big success out of it. When they talk on platforms, we all appreciate, but we don't really, if such kind of people happens in India, we don't even, after the first or second, he would have gone. I mean, nobody would have given him any, credence to his, he would not have got second, third chance also. So that's where I think, there is no easy solution to this or easy answer to this particular thing. Muthu, are you there? Hi, Muthu.
I think we lost him, sir. He will join in.
Yeah, looks like. Okay. Okay, Sumitra, you carry on. Try to. Are there any other questions?
No, sir. There is a question from Padma Srinivasan, sir. So, what is your idea on Indian startups working with foreign startups on a shared idea? Will government or an incubator allow to do?
No, see, if you have a shared idea, and if some foreign fellow wants to enter into as a partner or something, there is no bar on that particular thing as far as the incubator is concerned. Now, when it question of if they have to give some grants to that particular incubator, I think there are certain conditions that one need to fulfill. Okay, a majority shareholding has to be with the Indian and with an Indian, basically. So if that gets fulfilled, I think they would also even get the grants. So actually, if you ask me, it is always very useful to have somebody as a foreign partner, right from the beginning, not as an equity holder and other thing. Right from beginning, if he's a partner in developing the things, it may be very good, in the sense they would bring in the current knowledge from his side, and these people will provide the knowledge. It's a complementary each other, and it really will do very well. Indeed, I must tell you, some of the entrepreneurs from the biotech industry, or from the what I call other than ITC kind of things, they are all been those who have returned from abroad and those who have connections with abroad are been really successful. Okay, when it comes to entrepreneurship and other thing, I think the connections with West world is really helping them in really making a good progress and towards success. I think I personally feel it is very good to have such kind of collaborations.
Sorry, my internet died, so I have to use my phone.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So please, please go ahead. Any next question? Anyone has a question? Please go ahead with it. While we are just seeing whether anyone has a question, we usually record the session, so hopefully that's okay for us to share it with
Uh,
others.
yeah, hello, sir. I'm
Yes, please go
Akash.
ahead.
So I had a one specific question. Like in India, we generally see all the research institutions or whatever governments grants and everything that we get the entrepreneurship. It is more or less based on the number of patents you generate, the number of IPs you have. But on other side, if we see at the global level, most of the projects that come today are in some for one or other form open source. But there is like lack of knowledge or lack of understanding, I don't know what, but India readily lacks in this open source projects. So like what are your views on this specifically?
No, see, I don't think that what you are understanding is right, because if you look into some of the schemes like big biotechnology ignition grant or some other schemes which are there, they don't look at how many patents you have. They look at what idea you have. If the idea is good, okay, they would consider. Yes, if you have a patent on that, it's a bonus. But they don't insist that you should have a patent. Big is basically to do the proof of concept. Where is the question of patent when you are doing a proof of concept? But some people who have some sort of advanced little into the proof of concept, they would have taken a patent and they would also be competing with you. But it's not necessarily that you need to have a patent in this. I don't know. I mean, who gave you this idea that the patent is a must for getting grants? But when you are looking at next stage, then for example, you go to SIBRI. In the SIBRI, the Small Business Incubation Research Initiative, where they would look for what knowledge base that you have, whether you have patent or protected IP protected knowledge, so that they can fund it and take it to the next level. Okay, there are some schemes which are advanced in the entrepreneurial activity, what they call the TRL 1 to TRL 10, of which some of the states which require certain amount of new knowledge generation, new knowledge patents you have, then it will be ideal. In the not all cases that they look for patents.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? I think it was a very useful session. I think it's an amazing topic to take. And as you rightly said, we've made actually quite good progress in the last 10 years. Maybe it will take us another 10 before we will get into this in a full way. So I'd like to thank you for giving us your time, and also the team here, Archana, Sumitra, and Pajista for being on the backup. Also, while I dropped out, I'm taking care of the thing. Thank you to them. And we will sort of, we usually record the sessions and then put it in the YouTube channel. I hope that's okay with you, Yogeswara.
No issue. No issue.
Yeah.
You can edit
So,
little here, there, and then put it.
Yeah. So we thank you for your time as always for supporting us at HTIC, and we look forward to having you back in Chennai, hopefully not in the near future, not too long away. And you stay safe and you take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. And I want to thank the audience and you for a very interesting afternoon conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much all for patiently
Okay, bye.
listening to.
Bye.
Bye. Good. Thank you.